Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Mr. Executive Director, always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Always being with you.
Yeah.
Good
so, it's been quite an interesting session. We've been breaking it down. What's out there before we even get to the tax bill and how that might affect the flow of funds to the Department of Transportation? What else has been going on in your world from the legislative perspective?
Well, from the legislative perspective, we're just trying to get a budget, and a lot of that is making sure our appropriations bill, since we are a special fund agency, doesn't have any type of restrictions within it that would negatively impact how we implement that federal program.
Okay.
So basically having a clean appropriations bill. In years past, when they've had a transfer bill or a projects bill, there's normally a lot of infrastructure types projects that are in that come to our budget. So we'll wait and see if that happens, and if so, what would that look like? And then beyond that, everything else we were focusing on has been trying to get a modernization, if you will, of our funding model. And this House Bill 1 had a component, as you know, that dealt with the fuel tax. And so when I guess the decision was made by leadership to move to a more consumption-based model, that became the conversation. So now we're trying to look and see, assuming the governor signs HB 1 into law, what that would look like for us, as it begins going in. The one thing that I can assure everybody of, because we helped with the language that was in both of those bills, is it's written to make sure that every penny that's collected, regardless of who's at the helm of the Department of Transportation, all of that funds is tied back to our 3-year plan, which is just a list of projects that we do around the state.
Okay.
So I do think that there will be the level of transparency and responsibleness that the people have expected from the Department of Transportation in a way that hopefully had a lot to do with why the legislature was willing to help us acquire more funding so that we could get more work done and improve our infrastructure.
So let's talk about what the bill HB 1, as you mentioned, it's now poised for the governor to sign. It includes an additional excise tax of 9 cents per gallon that would be imposed in equal 3 cents per gallon increments over 3 years. And I can't recall, Brad, is that go into effect in 26? It begins in 26, right?
It begins in 26. The first year, the total increase for FY26 is expected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $71.25 million. That would be split between the Department of Transportation and state aid. That's another part that, MDOT gets a lot of the attention on this, but the Office of State Aid is housed within the Office of the Governor, and that is a program that Harry Lee James does a really good job of administering throughout the state with all the 82 counties. And so it did a couple of things for them. It gives them more revenue, but it also raised the floor for state aid, so county boards of supervisors have more obligation authority at the beginning of their term, which will help them get the money to the projects and get everything underway sooner. So this is hopefully going to benefit not just the state and interstate transportation system, but also all the county roads and city roads that fall under the state aid road program.
Okay. Yeah, so I just pulled it up real quick to make sure we got this right. The 3 cents per gallon increase is actually based on our fiscal year, and so it looks like it goes into effect July 1 of this year, and then the subsequent years, July 1, 26, another 3 cents, and then July 1, 27, another 3 cents. So fully implemented in for the entire year in 2028 for half the year. You would pay 6 cents a gallon in 27 and 9 cents a gallon for the back half of 27.
Right.
That's the way it looks.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
And that would generate, when fully implemented, a little better than $200 million, all for roads and bridges around the state. So, that's a positive thing, especially if we're able to get that all put on projects, which we're committed to doing.
So just thinking through the math real quick, Brad, the original House bill, as you know, HB 1, would have imposed a 5% sales tax on the purchase of fuel, but it would remove the diversion from the Lottery Corporation of $80 million a year to the Department of Transportation, replacing that with $100 million diversion to the Public Employees Retirement System. So you would the Department of Transportation would lose that $80 million, but it would pick up what the additional revenue would be generated by the sales tax increase.
Right, and you'll recall what the House did when the Senate bill was first sent to them. They struck the language out, put the original language of House Bill 1 in it with some tweaks, and one of those tweaks were that they did away with the 5% sales tax and put in there a 15 cents fuel tax, which is about equal money.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking about that level of money, you're netting enough to where losing the $80 million lottery is not quite as big of a hit on our budget.
I got you.
Hopefully we will maintain the lottery after receiving this, because if we're getting in the neighborhood the first year, I think we're expected to get about $50 million. If we were to lose the lottery there, it's a net cut to
about
us.
$30 million.
So I'm expecting us to be able to maintain the use of lottery funds for transportation, because it's important, because the lottery money does not go through our federal program since it's purely state funds, and we're able to dedicate 100% of those to two-lane highways.
Okay.
So if we were to lose the lottery money as of July 1 of 2026, you've got about 49 projects in 32 counties that we would terminate over the next couple of years.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll be able to continue to keep that 9 cents. While it's a huge jump, taking $80 million from it would be a more noticeable hit than what was in the original House.
Well, I mean, certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen now, because this bill doesn't have any such language in it, and I think it's headed to the governor. He's going to sign it.
Right, not through this. Now, the other Senate bill, 3095, is still alive, and I know they'll be talking through that. I don't know what the likelihood of anything happening there.
Makes sense,
But we've got a lot of really good leaders that are very much pro-transportation, so long as the money's being spent responsibly, and I feel like we've been able to illustrate to them that the department can be trusted with the resources to do what the taxpayers expect us to do. And it looks like this is going to probably be one of the more pro-transportation sessions we've ever had.
Help our folks understand, Brad, your sources of revenue, the breakdown between the total amount of your budget and then the breakdown from Fed and state.
Right. We've got about 52% of our budget is federal funds, and that's primarily all fuel tax, federal fuel tax. It's associated to us. The rest of our money that we try to get from the state, is the bulk of which will be fuel tax, especially with this increase in that. But we also get the $80 million from lottery. There's other contractors' fees and taxes that we receive, some use tax. The fees on electric and hybrid vehicles. Yeah. All of that, in comparison to the other streams that fund our budget, are very, very minimal. The bulk of it is all special fund fuel tax money, with over half of it being federal. Okay. And so we have to spend the state resources first in order to draw down the federal money. It's not a given that federal money's available to us. But we've got a really talented staff that do a good job of playing the shell game to make sure we're maximizing our state funds in a way that allows us to pull down 100% of the federal money that would be available to us. And so this will just be more tools in our toolbox for us to continue doing that.
Do you have any concerns, Brad, given the propensity for the federal government these days to really slash budgets across the board, it appears? Do you have some concerns about possibly losing federal funding for DOT purposes?
Not really, not through our federal program. The Congress has always, really, regardless of who was in control, of been in favor of funding the Federal Highway Administration at a level that would allow them to take care of all the partners in all the 50 states and territories. Now, there may be some attention given to looking at the way earmarks are used, or either potential discretionary grants that are given out through the federal government, that federal dollars is kind of outside the program. Those kind of change with administrations and Congresses as time goes on, so I don't know what that would look like. We're in the fourth year of this reauthorization of federal highway, so Congress will begin, I would expect, some point this year, in the EPW committee, which Senator Wicker's a ranking member on, having that conversation. So I would expect for us to know a little more about what that would be like. But traditionally, the Federal Highway Administration is going to be made whole, because there's a lot more certainty in how that money's spent on the existing system around the country.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can hang around, we keep talking some more. We got Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation, live with us in the Element Well studio. Coming right back. We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. One other thing to cover with respect to revenues and this increase in the excise tax is that after the 9 cents is implemented per gallon over 3 years, then we have a provision right in the bill that would further adjust that based on.
It did have an index factor that was capped. So I mean, it's not a pure index. I think it's something like capped at 1 cent every other year.
Seems like that's
that would
right.
be a potential.
Yeah.
In today's dollars, 1 cent generates about $23.5 million from fuel tax, and we share that with state aid. This other component that I think I failed to mention is there's about a few percent of this new fuel tax money that will go to the Strategic Multimodal Fund, which is used to help leverage federal dollars for waterports, airports, rail line, public transit, and other modes of transportation as well. So this was a truly all-encompassing transportation feature that went a little bit further than what we've normally done with fuel tax.
And is it true, Brad, that most states have this sort of regulations in place, or these sort of provisions in place is a better way to put it? It's not a regulation that adjusts their excise tax?
In
Many
fact,
do, right?
I may be
based
wrong
on
about
inflation,
this, but I think most of the language the Senate put in this House Bill 1 that deals with index factor was taken from the Alabama model of what they do at their DOT.
Yeah, it's based on I'm looking at it now, I found it, the National Highway Construction Cost Index, the NHCCI as it is known, issued by the U.S. Federal Highway Administration.
Right.
For the lagging, trailing 12-month period, based on that, it's adjusted our excise tax rate not to exceed a 1 cent increase in any given year, as you pointed out.
And that was one of the, as good as the 1987 four-lane program was, that was one of the things that was left out of it, that and was the main cause of why the funding model for the Mississippi Department of Transportation, unlike a lot of the other states, kind of started falling behind.
Yeah.
Because as the cost of doing business went up, everything else, the level of funding stayed the same.
Yeah. So. And I know you guys have been busy. You got lots of projects across the state. But before you start talking about that, which we definitely want to get to, just share with the folks what has happened with respect to, in the last few years, the cost of road construction and maintenance.
Oh, gosh. I mean, the cost of asphalt, cost of labor, other materials that are used in the aggregate all goes up. Another factor that we've experienced with price is competition in certain areas of the state, particularly in paving. There may not be the competition that you need that helps drive down the cost normally. But we would have, on average, about $350 million a year that we were putting into paving. And every year that the cost would go up, you would see the number of projects we were able to put that money on go down.
Okay.
And so it became obvious that something was going to have to be done to adjust that, because we also are graded by the feds on how well we're spending money to rehabilitate and maintain the existing investment that the taxpayers have. And so as the number of projects we were able to award for rehabilitation went down, the number of poor highways started going up, particularly in rural areas. And there was going to be a point in the future that if that percentage would have reached a certain level, there would have been a conversation much like we had back in 2017 about the local bridges, where the Fed said, look, if you're not going to take care of your investment, we're not going to give you our money to work on this. Yeah. So this was a very needed thing, but the funding model had not been adjusted since 1987. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that everything costs more today than what it did in 1987. And beyond that, the need that we had to have it in a recurring fashion. If you're one of our contractors, we depend on all of our partners in the private sector to deliver these products. Well, if they couldn't see our budget and know that this money was coming on an annual basis, that they could depend on it to have the work to do it, then they weren't going to go out and get a $2 million crane on a note that they didn't know they would have the work to pay the note off. Sure. So it wasn't just important that we had the extra funding to take care of the taxpayer system in a more efficient and better way, but we needed it in a way that where all of our partners could have the confidence that the work was going to continue in a way that would allow them to build up and hire the people and purchase the equipment and do the things necessary to deliver it in a timely and efficient manner as well.
All right. So, with respect to the projects going on across the state, I mean, I travel the state quite a bit, especially doing these remotes. I see lots of activity. You guys have been busy.
Yeah, we've got a lot of maintenance projects all over the state that we work with through the Lottery Fund and our normal paving program. A few years ago, the Commission was able to restart the capacity construction program, which, as you know, are the large projects that are adding lanes or efficiency to the system, whether that be a bypass or turning the 2 lanes into 4 lanes. We have, thanks to the legislative support, we've been able to award probably half a dozen of those projects, all the way from the Tennessee line, DeSoto County and Tippah County, all the way down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We've also been very successful in getting federal grants to help push a lot of those out, like I-10 over in Diamond Head and Hancock and Harrison County. Next on the list would be Highway 25 in Flowood, going from Grants Ferry back out to Mississippi 471, a widening of that. That's about a $50 million project that we will have ready for construction this year, and hopefully if the legislature will see fit to continue investing in those. Right on the heels of that one would be I-55 in Madison County. That's where the county is building a road that crosses the interstate, and we will build approaches to that bridge, making it an interchange there between Gluckstadt and Madison. But before we could build an interchange there, the Federal Highway Administration is mandating that we widen the interstate and add some lanes there. So that'll be a pretty significant, about $150 million project that will be coming close to construction ready here in the next few months that we'll be doing. And from there, there's areas all over the state that we're behind on because this program, due to lack of funds, had been paused, for lack of a better way to put it, by previous commissions in the past. And so what the legislature has done this year, even though a lot of that money is going to go to trying to allow us to catch up on the maintenance of the system, by having it there, we're not going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul, so it'll allow this capacity program to stay alive, and hopefully we'll continue to get the one-time investments that go into the construction of those projects to bring them about and make it easier for people to travel around the state, for businesses to get their goods in and out of the state as well as their people. And do all the things necessary to have a strong and vibrant economy.
We're talking to Brad White, Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Brad, are there data sets available that show the cost of construction per mile by state?
Yeah, we've got that. I'm not sure if it's on our website or not, but it can be. I mean, it's easily accessible.
Yeah. So how do we rank?
And it changes. I mean, it depends on where you're going. I mean, again, competition among the companies. If you get an area of the state that's got more than one paving company, you get a better price on your project than an area that's got one. I mean, we've got times that we only award a project if it goes less than 10% over that original state estimate. And so there are times that we've had situations where you get a single bidder that's over that 10%, and we are not able to continue pushing the project out. So you've got that type of situation that's a factor as well. But by and large, I think we rank very close as far as cost as a lot of the states, at least surrounding us. It's just that we have not been as quick to act in addressing the funding issue as those states.
Yeah.
You go to a state of Texas, you see a lot of work, but they're not hurting for money because they can provide a lot of their funds through the gas and oil industry, that was very large over there. And then you've got places like Tennessee and Arkansas and Alabama that have adjusted their funding models, in the past, and they kind of got a jump start on what they do. But by and large, I think we're very close to all of those in the southern region.
Yeah. I seem to recall reading an analysis. It's been a few years that the cost in Louisiana was extremely high just because of the terrain itself. Had a lot of bridges, which cost a lot more
That's
than
right.
just.
And if you look at our own areas. If you're doing a project in DeSoto County, the right of way is going to be more expensive up there to purchase than it would if you're buying in Simpson County, where
Sure.
I'm from.
Sure.
If you're in a very urban area that's got a really big build out of utilities, around, the cost of removing those utilities and things like that can make the cost go up.
Okay.
If you look at the one of the projects that Commissioner Simmons has on the books now is the long-awaited Port Gibson bypass, which I think is the only project left undone from the 87 4-lane program. But due to all of the the unique situations with historics and environmental processes and everything for that area, the cost of that goes up, and it makes it a lot harder to deliver the product.
Yeah,
you know?
no doubt about it. Before we go, got a couple of seconds. You're constantly looking at ways of improving efficiencies in your organization, are you not?
We are, absolutely. We spend a lot of time. In fact, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow where we're looking at that. And in anticipation of the governor signing this, I want to be sure that we're going to be able to show to the penny where whatever revenue that we receive additional from this, where it went, how it was spent, and what the result was. So
Right.
not just on how we do it, but how do we make it transparent enough to communicate it back out to someone where they can continue having faith in what we do.
I think the people appreciate that. Thank you, Brad, for
Absolutely.
coming in.
Thank
Brad
you.
White, Executive Director, Mississippi Department of Transportation. We're coming right back. Half an hour of middays remain.